Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever looked into hunting or sport shooting in Canada, you already know the paperwork can feel, well, a bit daunting. Today, we're cutting through all that noise. We're going to break down the exact roadmap, the real costs, and the hard requirements for getting your possession and acquisition license, all based on the latest guidelines.
Here's the roadmap for our journey today. We'll start by figuring out what a PAL actually is. Then we'll walk through the four-step application process, dig into the background checks, break down those hidden costs, look at common application killers, and finally wrap up with the strict rules of ownership. Let's get right into it. Section 1. What is a PAL? Let's understand this Canadian firearms license. Okay, so by definition, a PAL, which stands for Possession and Acquisition License, is a mandatory federal document issued under the Firearms Act by the RCMP. Its entire purpose? Public safety. And I really want to stress this right out of the gate. Without a valid PAL, purchasing, possessing, or even acquiring firearms in Canada is completely, absolutely illegal. No exceptions. It applies uniformly to everything from your grandpa's standard hunting rifle to a restricted handgun. Now, things get interesting when we look at the two main flavors of this license. On one hand, you have the non-restricted PAL. This is your standard entry point for hunting rifles and shotguns. There's no individual firearm registration required, and it comes with this oddly specific federal fee of $69.20. But if you want to step up to handguns, you need the restricted PAL, or RPAL. This is a whole different ballgame. It triggers mandatory registration, incredibly strict transport rules, and bumps your fee up to just over $92. Moving on to Section 2, the four-step application process, from safety course to submission. So how do you actually get one of these? The journey breaks down into four really clear steps. It all kicks off with a mandatory 1 to 2 day safety course. Oh, and if you're going for that restricted license, you actually have to take a second, separate course just for restricted firearms. Step 2 happens almost immediately, usually on the exact same day as your course. You'll tackle your written and practical exams. Step 3 is all about the paperwork, gathering your documents, your photos, getting your references lined up, and officially submitting RCMP Form 5592. Finally, Step 4 is the waiting game while you undergo a rigorous background check. And speaking of those exams, here's a crucial number: 80%. You cannot just scrape by here. You absolutely must score at least an 80 on both the written and practical safety tests to even submit an application. The written part covers the laws and procedures, while the practical requires you to physically prove you can handle these things safely. The federal standard for safety is set very, very high right from the start. Section 3. Eligibility and background checks, the RCMP evaluation process. The RCMP definitely does not take these background checks lightly. They aren't just doing a quick computer scan. They're actively digging into your personal history. To give you an idea, a violent criminal history triggers a massive 5 to 10 year mandatory waiting period before they'll even look at an application. Domestic violence, 5 years minimum. Even a substance abuse conviction, like a DUI, will slam the brakes on your application for 3 to 5 years. And mental health concerns, especially those involving court-ordered treatments, well, those are scrutinized on a very strict case-by-case basis. Now, let's say your record is completely spotless. You should expect a standard processing time of about 45 days for first-time applicants. But keep in mind, this isn't some automated rubber stamp. During this window, the RCMP will very likely pick up the phone and directly interview your personal references. Section 4. Breaking down the costs. Budgeting for your license. A lot of folks look at that $69 application fee and think, hey, that's pretty cheap. Well, prepare for a bit of a rude awakening. The real expense here is the mandatory safety courses. By the time you factor in a combined restricted course, getting your passport photos, and maybe some shipping fees, your actual out-of-pocket cost is realistically going to sit somewhere between $455 and $725. It's an investment, for sure. Section 5. Common pitfalls and mistakes. Why applications get rejected. Honestly, nothing is worse than waiting months only to get your application tossed out over a silly clerical error. The RCMP will absolutely not process incomplete forms. If you forget a single date, or if one of your references just misses a phone call, your application stalls instantly. Another huge mistake? Trying to hide a past criminal or domestic issue, hoping they won't find it. Trust me, they will. Also, you've got to make sure your passport photos are properly signed by your instructor or guarantor, and that your address matches perfectly across all your documentation. Section 6. Rules of responsible ownership. Storage, transport, and renewal.
So, you finally got the license. Now what? Well, the RCMP enforces very different, very strict storage standards depending on what kind of firearm you own. For a standard, non-restricted hunting rifle, you've got slightly more flexibility. You can use a trigger lock or keep it in a locked cabinet, and the ammo has to be stored separately. But if you have a restricted handgun, you must use a trigger lock and lock it inside an RCMP-approved safe or vault. The requirements scale up significantly based on the classification to prevent unauthorized access. Transporting them is a whole different beast, too. Non-restricted firearms can basically just be unloaded and safely moved for lawful purposes, like heading out on a hunting trip. But restricted firearms? They require an official authorization to transport permit, an ATT, for almost any movement. It's a massive distinction. Your RPL does come with an automatic ATT for going back and forth to an approved shooting range. But let's say you're moving to a new house or you need to take the firearm to a police station, you literally have to apply for a special ATT before you ever put that item in your vehicle.
And remember, your legal status isn't permanent. You have to renew this license every 5 years. The absolute best practice is to hop online and submit your renewal 6 months out. At 4 months out, the RCMP will kindly send you a reminder in the mail. But if you let it slide past that expiry date, your possession instantly becomes illegal. You can't keep the firearms, you certainly can't buy ammo. You'd have to immediately secure your firearms and call the RCMP, because your legal coverage has completely vanished.
On the flip side, what happens if your application or renewal is actually denied? Well, the clock starts ticking immediately. You have exactly a 30-day window to file a formal appeal with the Federal Court of Canada. The RCMP will give you written reasons for the denial, but if you want to challenge it, provide evidence of rehabilitation, or clear up a misunderstanding, you have to move incredibly fast. So, after seeing all of this, knowing the intense scrutiny of the background checks, the incredibly strict transportation rules, and the continuous 5-year renewal cycle, are you fully prepared to take on the ongoing ethical and legal responsibilities of Canadian firearm ownership? It's a complex system, one that prioritizes public safety above all else. It requires continuous compliance, education, and quite frankly, a profound respect for the law. So what's your next step?